Hello, I'm Agatha Thrash, a staff physician at UT Pines Institute. I think one of the most entertaining and perhaps exciting adventures that I have engaged in my life has been that of looking into vegetarianism. I remember when I was a little girl and thought about being a vegetarian, I thought, well, that's very strange. I never thought I would be one. We're going to discuss some aspects of being vegetarians in the next half an hour, and we hope you'll join us.
The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented. Welcome to Help Yourself to Health with Dr. Agatha Thrash of UT Pines Institute. And now, here's your host, Dr. Thrash.
When we began to eat a vegetarian cuisine in my home, I remember the first thing that we did was simply to start cutting down on the intake of meat. And then it wasn't very long before we decided that we could eat some meals that were completely meatless. And so that's what we did. We just had a meal that was just a lot of vegetables, which was very nice anyway. We'd grown up that way. My husband and I had both grown up on farms, and in the farm, when the vegetable garden starts coming in, I remember my mother would sometimes just have a table filled with all sorts of vegetables that came from our garden. We didn't mind at all that there was no meat because there were so many delightful vegetables. But in my home, once we had started cutting down on meat, then we had a few things that we had to face. Number one was, what do we do when we eat out? Well, we always ate meat when we ate out because, generally speaking, you expect that you're going to be served meat when you eat out. So then one day somebody said to us, why don't you try the nice vegetarian cuisine that they have here in this restaurant? So we tried that, and it was delightful. So after that, we began to look for restaurants that had vegetarian lines in their, along their serving area. Then, as time went by, I began to recognize that I didn't feel as good when I ate meat, and so I said to my husband one day, I just don't feel good. We were in the Miami airport, and we had just eaten a filet mignon, which was really quite good. But I said, I don't think I'll ever eat meat again. And he said, you know, I've noticed that I don't feel good when I eat meat. And I said, yes, and I've decided I'm not going to eat meat anymore. And from that day on, I don't think I've ever had any meat. It wasn't long before the entire household was using a meat-free diet. Now, I found that children were a little hard to convince at one time or other because they'd think, I'd like to have a hot dog or a hamburger. And so we began to look for substitutes for these, and at first we began to lean rather heavily on the meat substitutes. But as time went by, even those we stopped using. And so now we just talk it up, and we recognize a lot of the benefits, the heart benefits, the gastrointestinal benefits, the benefits to the blood pressure, the protection against diabetes and against poor vision and those kinds of things. And so as we have, as time has gone by, we've become more and more convinced of the beauties of the vegetarian diet. Now, one of the problems is, how do you go from preparing a meat-based diet in your kitchen to preparing a totally vegetarian-based diet in your kitchen? And so I've asked Lydia Seda, who is a very excellent cook and has prepared some very nice things. Thank you, Lydia, for coming today. And I'd like you to prepare tell us about how you prepared some of these very delightful things that you have here.
Well, what we have here is basically just to give everyone an idea of what you can have. And here I have a lot of vegetables, some fruit, and also a mashed potato with a gravy dish as well.
Mashed potatoes?
Yes, yes, without any butter and without any of the heavy oils and heavy fats in them as well.
How does one mash potatoes without dairy milk and butter?
Well, you can use soy milk instead, or you can make a cashew milk or any other type of nut milk and use that instead. And that gives a nice thicker consistency.
Sounds as if you could even make a nice potato soup. Just using soy milk and potatoes.
Exactly, and a little bit of salt and a little bit of basil.
I can envision that you might even make a potato souffle in the same way.
Exactly.
Potatoes that are maybe something like parboiled, and some onions that are chopped there and maybe braised a little bit before you put them on. And pour soy milk over it. Put it in the oven and bake it. Makes my mouth water just to think of it.
Very simple. And it doesn't take all that much time. I think many times nowadays people don't take time to eat well and to prepare. And fast foods are what people have in mind, but it's not nutritious foods.
Yes, I always wonder what people are going to do with the time they save in fast foods places, because
being online, yes.
Because what is more important than taking care of the food that we eat? Because we think with the food we eat, we sing with the food we eat, we pray with the food we eat.
We do everything.
And we do everything that we're going to do with the food that we eat.
Exactly. And many times I tell people, you may spend a little bit more time in preparation if you're not accustomed to preparing, especially if you're accustomed to eating out all the time. But you may save a lot more money on doctor bills and the time you spend in the doctor's office as well, and time that you lose from work, and money that you may lose because you've been had to be out of work. So in the long run, just and taking care of yourself, you have better health, and you'll save some time and some money as well.
You know, Lydia, it is true that at first you'll probably spend more time in the kitchen cooking the vegetarian things than you've been accustomed to cooking the familiar meat dishes that you...
because you're learning.
But I can assure you that I don't spend all day in the kitchen. I
Neither
enjoy cooking, but that's not my favorite activity. And so I go to the kitchen and cook, and it's done. If I'm going to cook, I may cook enough for 3 or 4 meals, and then I freeze the rest. And and I have just a portion that we're going to have for that meal.
Just like any other cook that's used to cooking would prepare a meal and then store some and freeze some and have some for later on. These are the same principle.
Same principle.
Exactly.
Yes, and the same principles for preparing a menu. I remember when I was using meat as the meat-based diet, it was a meat, something green, something yellow, a bread, a spread, a beverage, and you know that was the meal.
And that was exactly
exactly the same way. You have a main dish, a cooked dish, a raw dish, and bread and spread, and if anybody needs it, you've got water as a beverage, and you have the meal.
Exactly. And the nice thing about this is that it's low in protein. And what's the problem?
Low in protein.
Yes, it is.
I didn't expect. I didn't expect you to say
that. Was that a curveball I threw in there?
Because most nutritionists don't say low protein. They say why. Now they say high. Now why do you say low in protein?
Well, we have to recognize that humans don't necessarily need the same amount of proteins as other species do, and we can see that especially with the younger species, babies,
when they're
growing. And a human baby, let's say, needs about 1.2 milligrams per liter of calcium to be able to double its birth weight in about 120 days. And a calf would need about 3.3 milligrams of calcium, of protein per liter to be able to double its birth weight in about 47 days. And a cat may need about 7.5 to 9.5 milligrams of protein to be able to double its birth weight in about 7 days. So depending on the species is the need for protein.
As specific as the fingerprint is the quantity of the protein in the mother's milk.
Exactly.
To make the little animal do exactly what the Creator wanted it to do.
To be able for it to grow.
So you mean once we get grown, then we're not going to need so much protein anymore?
Exactly.
So we don't need milk anymore?
Exactly. Well, what happens is once the child is weaned, the best thing that they weaned from is the mother's milk if possible. And after that, they can have soy milk or nut milks. If you want to continue giving them certain types of milk, that would be fine. What happens is many times after they're weaned, if the mother is breastfeeding, they receive cow's milk. So the nutrition that the cow or the calf may need goes to the infant who doesn't have the same needs. and so the child grows much quicker than maybe need be. And accelerated growth also contributes to accelerated time, or when they come to purity at a much earlier age as well.
And that's undesirable.
Undesirable,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, they have found also that accelerated aging will cause accelerated death, and certain diseases that are degenerative, like diabetes and arthritis and even cancers. The idea is like putting a log into a fireplace in comparison to putting wood shavings. Which ones would burn up faster? With the wood shavings, of course. So the idea is putting something into the body that the body needs, and we have to know the needs of the body as well. Another experiment they did with men, they gave them about 1,400 milligrams of calcium, and then they gave them protein. They had two different groups. One group had about 48 grams of protein. The other group had about 142 grams of protein. And what they found, these two groups, even though they had the same amount of calcium, that the group who had the lower amount of protein was able to retain more calcium, about 10 milligrams of calcium. But the group who was having intake of higher amounts of protein, they actually were losing about 84 milligrams of calcium.
I see what you're saying. The higher your protein intake, the more calcium you're going to be losing.
Exactly.
And so if you have a high protein diet, you must have a high calcium diet to in the hope that you can hold on to some of it.
Exactly. So what happens over a period of time, this can cause osteoporosis. It's a thinning of the bones. So having a high protein diet is not necessary, and a vegetarian will get a good 75 grams of protein per day. And what the RDA recommends for men is about 54 grams, and for women is around 45 grams of protein. And that's well over the required amount. Because I understand, Dr. Agatha, that you've even recommended at times that if we're eating a good balanced diet, that maybe even 20, 25 grams of protein would be suffice. And many other doctors feel the same way.
It suffices, but probably nobody ever achieves that
a
level.
It's really hard to do.
Really hard to do, because when we are trying to get our kidney patients on a low protein diet, maybe around 20 grams of protein per day, we have to go to such extreme measures as giving them starch crackers and forget any kind of unrefined, food. We're trying to refine out all the protein that we can and give them just very refined things, lots of oil and things of that nature, just to keep their calories up.
Even on a vegetarian diet, to have a protein level that is that low anyway.
But if you have well-selected protein, 20 to 25 grams is usually enough for a person in a day. But none of us is able to achieve such a low level unless we take special measures to do so.
And another wonderful thing about a good vegetarian diet is that it's high in fiber. And many of you have heard fiber being toted, and it should be toted. It should be toted well up and high, because they have found that individuals that consume anywhere from 25 to 35 grams of of fiber per day can reduce their risk of cancers. And also now they're finding is that anyone who eats about 50 grams to 100 grams of fiber per day will actually reduce their chances of acquiring diabetes as well. The average American consumes about 15% of their diet in fiber, which is quite low. And it's because many of the foods that the average American eats, or individuals in affluent societies, is high in fat, high in cholesterol, but very low in fiber and empty calories.
Yeah, that's too bad. Now I see here that you have this as if it's you're intending this to be a main dish.
Yes, I am.
Potato, and you have what kind of gravy is this?
It's a cashew gravy.
A cashew gravy. Oh, that would be high in protein. Of course, it's not a lot. You don't have a lot of gravy.
No, I don't.
And so it's not a huge amount of cashews. And we want to keep cashews down because they are a rather concentrated food. So you've got potatoes and cashew gravy, and that's a main dish.
It is a main dish.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to know that, because you know, potatoes are so freely available everywhere, and if I can have this as a main dish, then I have a yellow vegetable or a green vegetable and what you have here, like a vegetable platter.
A vegetable platter.
What is in the middle of the vegetable platter?
The vegetable platter has a soy mayonnaise.
Let me see that.
That we've made.
A soy mayonnaise. Oh, that smells good. Does it have a little, maybe a little garlic in it, or you can put
little garlic. It has a little onion as well. And it's quite simple. And if any of you like to know how to prepare this recipe, let me share with you how you can get a hold of it. It's www.3abn.org. Then you press links, and then you go to Uchee Pines, and that's U-C-H-E-E, the word pines. And if you are interested in some of the other recipes we have here, I'd like to share them with you. And the ingredients are as follows. 5 cups of potatoes. Now this is for the mashed potato recipe. 5 cups of potatoes, a half a cup of soy powder, or a half to 1 cup of soy or nut milk, 1½ teaspoons of onion powder, 1½ teaspoons of salt, 5 tablespoons of parsley. And another recipe that we have here that I'd like to share with you is a broccoli salad.
Oh, that looks very simple but very nice.
It's very nice. There's a spring onion there, some fresh cut garlic, cloves, and they can be steamed a little bit, so it takes away a little bit of the bite. And then this is some raw broccoli, and again you can steam it just a little bit if you like, but sometimes it's a good idea to have some raw vegetables in your meal.
And if they're nice and tender, I like them just raw.
Exactly, exactly.
Yes.
And
you have a recipe for this?
Yes, I do. For those of you who are interested, the ingredients for the broccoli salad is as follows. 4 cups broccoli spears, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1½ teaspoons of basil, 1 cup of onions chopped, 1½ teaspoons of salt, 2 tablespoons toasted sesame seeds, and 1½ teaspoons of lemon juice.
So you just put all this together?
That's it. It's very simple.
Yes, I can see myself just sort of sprinkling this and tossing it in just no time.
Yes, and I think when someone sits down to this type of a meal that they've prepared, something that's simple, something they know that's nutritious, and also something they feel like they are actually benefiting their bodies by what they're eating. I think it just gives a sense of importance when we think in the Bible that the Lord says we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and I think we should eat according to that principle.
Absolutely. We need to recognize that this equipment that we have is not just any kind of old equipment. This is a very special machine that we're dealing with, and of course we want to take good care of it. Now, there are a number of things that we can talk about concerning the vegetarian cuisine, and to understand just what to leave out has been quite a trial. But the next thing that I would like for us to do is to have Don Miller to join me here and to tell you some things that I think will be very helpful to you. And are you going to talk with us about precocious puberty, Don Miller?
A little bit.
This is Don Miller, who is a lifestyle counselor at Uchee Pines.
You know, usually when we think of the word precocious, we think of it in a very positive way. If a child's precocious, we think that, well, they can talk to us intelligently, they play well with other children, they seem to have a little bit more social graces. I find that many homeschooled children seem to be a little bit more precocious because they are allowed to expand their minds. And these, I think, are very good things. It's the precocious physical development, which leads to a precocious chemical development in the body, which I feel is very, very dangerous in today's society. We see precocious children growing up today. You see them waddling into the first years of school, looking like sumo wrestlers already. And I think that's a problem with that much development in a child. And this comes about mainly from the habit of overeating and the overuse of animal foods. Overeating is something that's very common in children. It's a habit that a child gets into, either forcing a child to finish what's on the plate, which you put on the plate for them, you can't leave the table till you eat it, or putting a lot of food on their plate and saying, if you finished everything you have, you can have dessert. Well, that's both those things are going to make a child overeat. And overeating will advance the child's metabolism to the point where it really slow it down and make them start growing larger. And then all the animal foods that we put into a child, which we can see nowadays, it's I think not even a question that they have all the hormones, growth hormones into food, because we want to make the animals grow fast, because the faster the animals grow, the sooner we get them to market. Trouble is, the thing called biomagnification, all these hormones in the animal the child is putting into their body, and this child all of a sudden starts growing as fast as that cow does, and pretty soon hormones are shooting out through that child, and the child's not ready to handle these changes in their bodies. And I think it's a very, very sad thing that we see in the children.
Yes, it is. And of course we do know that the more rapidly a child matures, the more rapidly he's going to go into the senile decline. And of course that is something that we don't want at all with our children. Now I have here a kidney which I'd like to show you. It's a plastic model, but it shows fairly well the way that the kidney actually looks internally. I think the kidney is one of the most beautiful of our internal organs, and we might think that's a little strange, but it is so regular. Everything about it is so neat. The little lines that go here can be seen with the naked eye, just as you can see them here in this. These are called medullary rays. And out here in this sort of pinkish part is that's the cortex. And this is really the business part of the kidneys. This is where the urine is formed. This is also where the blood is purified. This is where our minerals are balanced. An enormous amount of activity goes on right here. This is why when a person has a problem with the kidneys, they cannot live without the kidneys. Of course, we can take out a number of organs and people can live without those, but you can't take out the kidneys and live. You could take out one, and then the other kidney, fortunately, can overgrow and supply its place. So what we want to do when we think about the kidney is to do those things that will protect it. Drinking lots of water is one thing, one very important thing. Not eating too much protein is another very important thing, and the vegetarian diet is usually helpful with both of those. It provides more water, and it also provides a lower protein meal for satisfaction of our appetites, and still does not give us too much protein. Another thing, a lot of vegetarian foods are soy-based, and soy protein has a protective effect for this part out here that I told you was the business part of the kidneys, the cortex, the kidney cortex. And this protein actually has a healing and protective benefit. Now, if you form a stone, the stone is going to form probably somewhere right here at the tip of these little pyramids. And you can see that there is then an opening here, which is somewhat like a funnel. Here it is, it's cut away here, and there you can see the funnel part. And then the little stone forms there, falls down into the pelvis of the kidney, and then goes down the ureter all the way down to the bladder. Now, kidney stones are also more likely to be formed in people who eat a lot of animal protein, and in people who drink a lot of soft drinks. They're more likely to get kidney stones. And then how to treat your kidney stone becomes a serious problem, and maybe an extremely expensive problem as well. So in many ways, the vegetarian cuisine is very protective, very helpful for people who are willing to adapt it. Now, there's a downside to the meat problem, to the meat industry, that we need to discuss somewhat, which may help you if you are sort of teetering on the fence of whether to be a vegetarian or not. If you know the downside, it may help you to be a vegetarian, which as a physician, I feel very free to promote for people. So Don Miller is going to talk with you a little bit about some toxins in animals.
I'm going to just limit it to fish because of the amount of time remaining, but I want to read you a section out of the Clean Water Act, and here's what it says. Dilution is, well, this is what we always believed. I'm afraid we passed down that dilution is the solution to the pollution. Chemicals dumped in mixing zones can include mercury, BCBs, chloridane, BCC, dioxin and matrix, as well as many other chemicals. So basically what they're saying, there are places in water which are called mixing zones. And we are allowed to dump toxins into these mixing zones. It's allowed by the Clean Water Act. Now what happens? We've got these chemicals in the water. In the water we have fish. Now what I want to do is show you over here at the whiteboard, I want to show you a little study they did in the Long Island Sound in 1968. Basically you've got this water that's being, all the runoff from the land where you've got all kinds of chemicals and whatever else flowing into the water. Basically your zooplankton, the plankton, the little plants that live in the water are absorbing, or little animals that live in the water are accumulating these toxins in their little bodies about 800 times. This is what we call bioaccumulation. At the first level of the food chain, it's about that much. Now we've got some fish swimming through the water eating the zooplankton, and so they will, in their little bodies, about 31 times accumulation. So they're going to eat this, and all the chemicals that we might have in the water will be accumulated in their fat cells. And then fish number 2 eats fish number 1, and that takes up about another 1.7 times. From this fish, 1.7 times. Now what we have to do is multiply this times this times this. Now the next step we go to is the seagull who eats this fish. It takes up about 4.8 times. If you multiply all this together, it comes out to about 202,368 times what it was when it first came into the water. This is what happens when we eat an animal, a fish. If you like the fish, this is what happens when we eat the fish. All the toxins that have been going into this water from the runoff, from the sewage, from the factories, from the ships that flow through the water, are accumulating slowly but surely through the food chain until finally we are taking in fantastic amounts of these very deadly chemicals in our bodies. And so my thoughts are, it's not time to be a fish-o-vegetarian. It's time to be a strict vegetarian, living off of all animal products, Dr. Thrash.
Well, I can tell you, you have convinced me, and although I used to enjoy fish, I don't think I ever will again. Thank you so much for presenting these things to us. And with all of this, we do hope that you will consider firmly being a vegetarian.